Hey guys, and welcome to the session. This one's going to be a little bit shorter just because it's been a particularly busy week. So I want to look at something called the single dispatch, and this comes from the functools module in Python, which is built in. And this is a fairly niche function, but I think if you're kind of in the intermediate phase of learning Python, I think when you kind of cover all the basics, it's nice to kind of get into the functools and itertools stuff, especially the more kind of niche things. You never know when they're going to come in useful. So in this video, I want to kind of go through the basic use case of a single dispatch function and then show you a nice kind of practical example of where these might come in. Now let's start off with a scenario. Suppose you've got a function and this function might be able to accept a string, an integer, or a list. Now, for each of those given types it can take in, you want it to do something different. Now, one way of doing this is to do like an if, elif, else, etc., kind of handling each case. That can be a bit tricky to test. It can also look a bit cumbersome as well. However, what we can do is use a single dispatch to basically say, here's a base function, and this is going to raise some kind of error. Then what we do is define individual functions which handle each of those specific types. Maybe I should correct this here real quick. So that's what we're going to do. We'll walk through a really simple example first, and we'll go forward from there. So first thing I want to do is say from functools, can you import single dispatch here? And this is going to be our decorator for our function. So let's zoom in a bit, and let's go ahead and do def process here. And let's say value. And we'll do this here. And this is going to be like our base function. So we're going to be decorating this in just a second. And this is basically what's called if none of the other types are called, right? So suppose we were processing, say, I don't know, a string, a list, or a float. If none of these are passed in, this is the function that gets called, kind of like a callback or your else, so to speak. And this could say something like raise a type error. For now, let's just say oops, okay? But we can make this a bit fancier in just a minute. And this will be decorated with single dispatch. Now, this decorator then needs to have other functions registered to it. Let's begin with string. So what we do is do def underscore. And what's cool about this is that the single dispatch recognizes the type hint. So let's say value str, and let's just go ahead and do, let's say a string like this here. We'll make it a bit fancier in just a second, but just to show you like how this kind of relates to this here. Once that's done, we then need to then do at, now we call this guy here, process, and dot register, like that. So, a bit of a funky setup, isn't it? Let's just see what happens. So, we first defined our base with the single dispatch decorator. That came from functools. And then whatever that function's called, we then register additional functions to this function here. I suppose what we could do is use these inside our return values or our raises here. So let's do an f string for this guy. So maybe we could say, oops, we can't process, and we'll do blank here, type of value. Okay, looks good. Maybe we'll do this. Actually, let's do this as an f string as well. So we'll do a string and then do value here. Now this is a trivial novel example just to show you how this all works. We'll do a kind of real world one just after this. So if I go ahead and do print process, and let's do hello like this. Okay, -3, and look at that, a string hello. So that's gone ahead and called this guy here. Because we've registered this function to our single dispatch function, this basically knows, okay, this is a string coming in. I will accept this and I'll deal with this. So this guy is going to be handling all of those strings. Let's take this guy and put this down below. Now let's pass 1, 2, 3. So we're now passing an integer, and we have no function registered to our single dispatch one to handle these. So I would expect this to not go here, but to fall back, and we'll then see a type error. Let's try that. Look at that. Oops, we can't process that one. I think we can do dunder name for this guy here. It actually looks a bit nice and doesn't show the whole like class thing before it. There we go. Oops, we can't process int. Let's do a full stop as well. Sorry, bit pedantic, but yeah, make it look nice. Okay, cool. So now let's make it so it can process these as well. So all I can really do, to be honest, is kind of copy these and try and handle each one. For this guy here, I'll speed it up and I'll go ahead and do the list one. There we go. I had to reformat that very carefully at the end. And there we go. So this one is registered to accept lists. And we can see, yeah, I've done a simple F string and I've unpacked that list here as well. So we can see this guy is going to this one, and this one here is being sent to this one here because that's got the list on. Of course, we now need to do our last one, which is a float. So I would expect this to go down here, and let's do 3.14. So of course, with nothing registered, we are going to get this here. We can't process float. So what we need to do is take this guy, and to be honest, if I was doing this kind of, from like a brand new point of view, I would just copy and paste and just kind of change this here. But of course, if you want to type it all from scratch, you can as well. So we'll do a float like that. There we go. Try and spell it correctly, shall we? And now then, let's run this. Now all three of these should work. They do, look at that. So we now have a single dispatch function, and that now has 3 functions registered to it to handle a string, a list, or a float. So one more time, let's go through it from the beginning. We say from functools, import single dispatch. We set up a sort of generic function, and all this does is raise a type error. It doesn't have to, but I think this is the best way of doing it because we want this to kind of fall back and be the base case. So we raise a type error and we say, yep, we can't do something. This is decorated with single dispatch, and then all of the types you want to handle, you simply point to the main function and then do that function .register. So I've done it once, twice, 3 times here, and then each of those functions just has a different thing to return. So in my case, I've returned a string for each, but I've just done different things inside that string. You might want to add your little type-ins here. Let's say this, this, and this. There we go. Make that a bit neater, shall we? And that's all there is to it. So what I want to do now is get this screen cleared, and we'll have a go at doing like a nice JSON serializer program using single dispatch. Now to get us started, let me show you what we're going to be up against. So I've got 4 inputs. We have a int, string, list, boolean, and we're going to be letting JSON.dumps handle kind of all of the heavy lifting for us. So it's already built in, so no need to kind of do any of this ourselves. So if I do import JSON here, I'm going to let the dumps function handle these 3, and then just do str to return this here. So just to kind of show you, like, I guess from like a real world perspective, how you would do this. And then, the more types you add in, you might want to serialize those in a different way. So suppose we did something like JSON.dumps here, and let's suppose I wanted to do like a list like this. Okay, let's run that. Now it doesn't look any different in the console, but if you do a type here, it's just the way kind of str and repr are working. See, that's actually a string, even though it looks like a list. Or actually, if you do repr here, you might see kind of what it's actually coming out as. So it's coming out in this form here. So it doesn't look like it's doing much in the console, so to speak. But using this is a nice way to convert something like a list or a string or whatever into something that is actually valid JSON. So yeah, you have to use repr or try and use some kind of valid JSON thing to try and actually see this. But yeah, this is working. JSON.dumps is actually returning a string here, even though, of course, it looks like it is just returning the same list back. Let's try that again. There we go. So yeah, looks like a list. It's actually a string, but that's just the dumps function doing its job, which is cool. So what we want to do is basically do JSON.dumps for these 3, but this one we can just say convert to a string. So for string list boolean, do this. For int, do str. So same as last time, from functools, import single dispatch. Now we need our base, don't we? So let's do, let's say, serialize. I can never recall if it's the S or Z for the American or the British. Yeah, silly me. So let's go ahead and say value in here. And this is going to be raising our type error. So we can do t errors. And let's just say, I think right at the front here, you don't have to do the type of it. We can just say value cannot be converted, something like that. That looks good. And we then need to decorate it. So we can do @single dispatch. Now we need to do our 4 specific functions. And this is purely just kind of my kind of own preference of doing this, but what I'll be tempted to do is do like the 4 skeleton functions first, and then go ahead and like do the actual logic inside them. So if I did value, we'll start with the top one. This is going to be an integer. We'll leave that for now, keep it nice and simple, and just do like ... here. And then we'll do the registering of this to our like base function. That's called serialize. So we can just do serialize dot register. Okay, now let's copy these out. So this can be for our string. Let's see. And then we'll do our list. Then we'll do our boolean. So let's see, make sure I get this correct. So it's going to be int string list boolean. So int string list, and then bool. So with those done, we can now go ahead and do our respective returns for these. So these 3 are actually all going to be the same, which is quite nice. So we can just do return JSON.dumps, that's the one, and just do value like this here. Let's do this, we'll do that. Oh, no. There we go. And then this last guy here, we can just do return as a string the value. And actually these are actually all returning strings as well, so we may as well do our kind of returning type annotation there as well. There we go. And there we go. All that's needed to do now is just to call these and make sure that they all look okay. And running that, we can see that's all worked just fine. Let's actually pass these to Repr, and just to see like the actual serialization in effect. So if I do this top one here, there we go, we get this. I'll speed it up and do the other 3. And there we have it. So now they should look a bit different. So that's in their kind of valid JSON format, which is nice. Let's do a quick review from the top, and then we'll leave it there. So first of all, we import single dispatch, and of course we then have our base function here. So think of this as your base function, or your fallback, or we have a switch case thing. This is like your otherwise statement at the end. So the thing which is only called if any of its registered functions do not kind of hit, basically. So say if you passed in like a random custom class or whatever, I think that wouldn't come under any of these, so then this would then be raised, and yeah, it wouldn't do anything, apart from raising this, of course. Passing in an int, a string, a list, or a boolean makes it so that each of these respective things happen here. Of course, as you can see, the 4 examples all kind of correspond nicely to these function calls here, and that's why these 4 things absolutely work. These can be custom classes, it doesn't matter, it can be whatever you want. Just as a last point of order before we finish, now because these 3 do the same thing here, what you might want to do, now this is purely because this is kind of a rare case where I'm doing the same thing for 3 different types, we can actually do a union operator as part of our type int. So let me show you what that would look like. So if I did str and list, or bool, so I shouldn't say and, these are ors, so str or list or bool, and then get rid of these 2 here. Now this is purely because for this specific situation, these 3 types all do the same thing. Now you might not often have that, but if I run this now, it does exactly the same thing, which is pretty cool. So just kind of a little, not hack, but I guess a little kind of efficiency speed up you can do there. If you're doing the same thing for 2 different types, yeah, just stick in the union operator and say, yep, this particular function is going to handle this, or this, or this. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a nice way to kind of cut down on the number of lines you're doing. But yeah, hope this is helpful, guys. Have a great weekend. And if you have any topics you want to see, feel free to ping us a comment or a message. I'll be sure to get around to that topic. Cheers.